Yeah, so in the last video, we saw how to create HTML elements in the DOM dynamically. But those elements which were created, they did not have any attributes. In this video, we are going to see a method called setAttribute, using which we can add custom or whatever attributes we want in that element, or for that matter in any element. Okay, so let's continue from the example we had earlier. So let's say an empty list element is there, and in that we just took this my list ID, and then in this list, yeah, we appended a bunch of items which were li tags, and we set item 1, item 2, item 3, something like that in the content. So 1 to 5, which means that item 1 to item 5 will be inserted, right, dynamically. So we saw something like this in the last video. Now if you see that in this UL, all the li elements are, they're not having any attributes, right? They are not having any attributes, just li tag is there. What if I want some, let's say, id of these, like id is there for ul, I want id of, let's say, li also. How to do that, right? So for that we have this method called setAttribute, which is available on all the DOM elements, which is used to set the value of an attribute on the specified element. So for example, here, yeah, we are adding text, which means the inner content we are adding, but at the same time we can very well add an attribute. So let's say we are setting an attribute, and the first thing is like what attribute. So let's say we are trying to set the id attribute, and then we are trying to add some value. Okay, and this should also be a string. So let's create some dynamic value, something like, let's say, item hyphen I, which means that the first item's ID should be item hyphen 1, second item's ID should be item hyphen 2, and like that. So if we now refresh, then we see that IDs have been inserted, right? So now we have proper IDs for all of them. So in that manner, you can add whatever whatever attributes you want. Now these are standard attributes which are already available. We know that any element can have like something like ID, something like class. So these are standard. So for that, directly you will do that. Directly you will add that, right? But what if you are trying to add some piece of information which is not standard, but you still want to store that piece of data here somewhere, right? Which might be useful later when you are interacting with some APIs or something. You want to see that what data is attached to this item 3, and then you might want to use that later for hitting some API. So just what you can do is that in a similar manner you can do item same thing like set attribute, but apart this time, if some custom value, let's say my or task ID, let's say task ID or something, then you should not add this, right? Because if you do something like this, then like ID is added, in a similar manner this task ID will be added, and which will work fine. But actually when you verify your HTML, valid HTML verifier, then it will show you warning that this is not you should do. So there is a proper convention in HTML5 that if you want your custom attributes, then that should start with data hyphen, and that is it, right? And after that you can write anything like task ID, or you can write task hyphen ID, whatever, but it should start with data hyphen. That is the convention, and after that you can add whatever value you want. So let's say in this case any random string or something. Let's say right now just we are having this only, so item underscore and let's write something like this. So we are creating a string from I only, but let's give it a padding of um, width 3 with starting with 0. Okay, so which means that 1 will become 001, 2 will become 002, something like that, right? We saw this method earlier. So now we are going to add that also. So if we refresh that, and now we will see that this data hyphen task ID, an additional attribute is added, and this is our custom data, that's why it is starting with data hyphen. and yeah, you can pretty much add anything what you want here, and that later you can use. So that is all about creating or setting a new attribute, or for that matter, if already, let's say, id is already there, and if you run this command, then actually this will override the data. Okay, and if it is not there, then it will create that new attribute in that element. Okay, next, go to get attribute. So yeah, we saw set attribute in a similar manner. Get attribute returns the value of the specified attribute, which means that yeah, so let's say I'm interested in a particular item, and that item might be that item might be let's say this thing, item 2, let's say, or item 3. So its id is item hyphen 3. Okay, so I'm interested in this, and that item I have got it. And then you can very well do something like set attribute, sorry, get attribute, and then you can get at whatever attribute you want. So in this case, let's say I want to get this attribute, like whatever I set additional data, I want to get the data, right? And yeah, if you print this, then you get that data which is stored there, right? And again, this will work for anything, right? So let's say you simply get the IDs, obviously, and this is this itself, ID, using ID only we got it. But anyways, class attribute or any other attribute you could have very well got using this get attribute. Okay, so that is all set attribute and get attribute. In the next video, we are going to see that how can we remove attributes and remove the elements altogether. Let's say I want to completely remove this element altogether, and that too programmatically, how to do that. Okay, so let's see that in the next one.